Hello there. In this video, I'm not going to talk about a specific streetcar route, but a series of streetcar routes, those which serve the Canadian National Exhibition. So, let's get into the video. Before I get into the video, I just want to make a bit of a clarification, as the majority of the routes I'm going to talk about in this video only operated during the exhibition. So when the exhibition wasn't happening, these routes weren't operating. And in that, when I reference a route being abolished and count how many years it was in service, I'm not going to be using the term years, but seasons to denote the amount of exhibition seasons that it was operating for. The Canadian National Exhibition, or simply the X, is an annual event that takes place at the exhibition grounds at the end of August and attracts over 1 million guests a year. The event as we know it today was first held in 1879 as the Toronto Industrial Exhibition and was primarily focused on agriculture and technology. As the years went on and the event grew into what it is today, there has always been a need to transport people to the exhibition grounds for the event. Service to the exhibition would start with the very first event on September 2, 1879, when the Toronto Street Railway extended a single track from King Street down Strachan Avenue to Wellington Street. This would allow for the creation of the first exhibition streetcar service, that being the King via Strachan streetcar. This route would run from a crossover at River Street along King Street to Strachan Avenue and then south to Wellington Street. The King via Strachan would only operate Monday to Saturday when the exhibition was happening. For the first couple of years, patrons would have to walk the remaining distance between Wellington Street and the exhibition grounds. That would change in 1884 when a Belgian inventor, Charles van Deppelay, met with J.J. Wright to construct an electric railway to the exhibition grounds. This railway would run from Strachan Avenue to the Crystal Palace inside the exhibition grounds. This was the first electric railway in Canada and would prove to be a success, with thousands coming to see and ride the electric trains. This electric railway would also spur calls from residents of Toronto to have the streetcar network electrified, since at the time it was still using horse-drawn cars. After 5 years of operations, the electric railway would be shut down and abandoned, but its success and effect on the city would last until this day. Service on the King via Strachan streetcar would come to an end on September 19, 1890, ending 6 seasons of service. The following year, on September 8th, service to the exhibition would be by the King streetcar, now operating along an extended route to Dufferin Street and then south to a crossover at Huxley Street, now called Springhurst Avenue. The route would be electrified September 5, 1892, and this would also mark the beginning of the King Exhibition streetcar, as the normal King streetcar had been extended west from Dufferin Street to Roncesvalles Avenue. The High Park via Queen Exhibition streetcar would also begin service in 1892, running from George Street, west along Front Street to Church Street, north to King Street, west to Yonge Street, north to Queen Street, west to Dufferin Street, and then south to a crossover at Huxley Street. This route name would last only a year, and on September 5, 1893, it would be renamed to the Queen Exhibition streetcar, the route itself not changing. A year later, in time for the 1894 exhibition, the crossover at Huxley Street would be replaced by the newly built Dufferin Loop, which would be utilized by all exhibition-bound services until 1916. The Queen Exhibition streetcar would be temporarily suspended after the 1895 exhibition and wouldn't return until 1903. This would leave the King Exhibition streetcar as the sole service to the exhibition for a time. The Queen Exhibition streetcar would return on August 29, 1903, with the route now running from the intersection of Front and Church Streets, north to Queen Street, west to Dufferin Street, and then south to Dufferin Loop. On August 28, 1906, service to the exhibition would be joined by the Dovercourt Exhibition streetcar, which operated from a Y at Van Horn, today Dupont Street, south on Dovercourt Road, east on College Street, south on Ossington Avenue, west on Queen Street, and south on Dufferin Street to Dufferin Loop. The Dovercourt Exhibition Streetcar would operate like this until August 30th, 1909. On that day, service was altered so that during the morning and evening rush hours, streetcars would instead run east along Queen Street, south on Shaw Street, and west on King Street to Dufferin Street. This was done to maintain access to the large Massey Harris factory at King and Shaw for all of its workers. During the off-peak hours, the Dovercourt exhibition car would follow its normal route along Queen Street. With the start of World War I in 1914, the exhibition grounds would become a staging area for troops, although the annual exhibition event would continue as normal during the summer. 1914 would also see the establishment of 2 more routes serving the exhibition. Maybe. The 2 new routes in question may have been operating as early as 1910, but there is no way of knowing for sure. The first of these routes is the Avenue Road Exhibition Streetcar, which was a late evening return service operating from Dufferin Loop, east on King Street, north on Yonge Street, west on Bloor Street, and north on Avenue Road to a Y at St. Clair Avenue. The route would either then return to Dufferin Loop if a second trip was needed, or just go back to the Yorkville Car House. The other route in question is the Broadview Exhibition Streetcar, which was also a late evening return service. This route would operate from Dufferin Loop, east on Queen Street, and then north on Broadview Avenue to a Y at Danforth Avenue. This route too would either return to Dufferin Loop if another trip was needed, or just head back to the King Car House. The Avenue Road exhibition service would be short-lived, and at the conclusion of the 1915 exhibition on September 11th, the Avenue Road exhibition streetcar would be abolished, ending 2 seasons of service, or 5 depending on when that service actually started. 1916 would see some big changes to the exhibition services, as that year the first incarnation of Exhibition Loop would open after tracks along Bathurst Street were extended south to a new private right-of-way to the north of Fort York were built. Many new routes would spring up this year to serve the exhibition. The King Exhibition Streetcar would receive a branch line, with this branch line following the route as normal from Scarborough Beach Park, but branching off at Bathurst Street to access the new Exhibition Loop. Service to Dufferin Loop would remain. As well, some cars on both branches would only operate from Sherbourne Street to the exhibition in order to maintain service through the downtown core. The Queen Exhibition Streetcar would be temporarily suspended this year and replaced by the Parliament Exhibition Streetcar. This was a late evening return car which operated from Exhibition Loop, east on Front Street, north on York Street, east on Queen Street, north on Parliament Street, and east on Gerrard Street to a Y at Greenwood Avenue. If a second trip was needed, the car would return to the exhibition. If not, it would return to the King Car House. The Parliament exhibition car would only last until the end of the 1917 exhibition, when on September 8, 1917, it was abolished, ending 2 seasons of service. On August 28, 1916, the Dundas Exhibition Streetcar would begin operations as a late evening return service, running from Dufferin Loop, north on Dufferin Street, east on Queen Street, north on Ossington Avenue, west on Dundas Street and Howard Park Avenue, and then north on Roncesvalles Avenue and Dundas Street to a Y at Keele Street. Cars would return to Dufferin Loop if needed, but otherwise return to Dundas Car House. The Yonge Exhibition Streetcar would begin operations also as a late evening return service. This route would operate from Exhibition Loop, east on Front Street and north on Yonge Street to a Y at Price Street. This route would be extended north to a Y at Woodlawn Avenue a year later. Cars would either return to Exhibition Loop or the Yorkville Car House depending on what was needed. The Broadview Exhibition Streetcar would see a small change to its route, as it would now operate along King Street instead of Queen Street. Lastly, there was the Church Exhibition Streetcar, which was also a late evening return service. This route would operate from Exhibition Loop, east on Front Street, north on Church Street, east on Bloor Street, and then north on Sherbourne Street to an on-street loop via Elm Avenue, Glen Road, and South Drive. Cars would either return to Exhibition Loop or the Yorkville Car House depending on what was needed. I have said it a bunch of times now, but I think I should explain what a late evening return service is. As its name implies, it only runs at the end of the day, and its primary goal is to take people home from the exhibition. By 1916, the King Exhibition and Dovercourt Exhibition cars are the only all-day services to the exhibition. While people don't mind the journey during the day, once they have had their fun at the exhibition, people tend to want to get home quickly. So the late evening runs are a means to minimize both the commute time and the number of transfers one may have to make to get home. As you may have surmised from my descriptions of the routes, they are usually one-way trips, with cars being dispatched from the car house, picking up passengers at the exhibition, and taking them to whatever suburban part of the city they are going to. The car then either returns to the exhibition if they need to, or instead just returns to the car house. On August 26, 1918, the Queen Exhibition Streetcar would return as the late evening return service, replacing the Parliament Exhibition Streetcar. The Toronto Transportation Commission would take control of Toronto's streetcar network in 1921, although service to the exhibition would remain largely unchanged until 1923. The only real changes in the meantime would be an extension of the Queen Exhibition car to a Y at Coxwell Avenue. As well, the 1922 exhibition would be the last season for the Church Exhibition streetcar, which was abolished on September 9, 1922, ending 6 seasons of service. In 1923, the TTC would introduce many changes to the various routes serving the exhibition, as well as introduce new ones. The King Exhibition streetcar service to Dufferin Loop would be ended. Instead, King Exhibition streetcars would now operate from Exhibition Loop, north on Bathurst Street, east on King Street and Queen Street, and then north on Broadview Avenue to Arundel Loop. This service to Arundel Loop would only last a year though, as in 1924 service would be extended east along Danforth Avenue to Coxwell Loop. The Broadview Exhibition streetcar would be absorbed into the King Exhibition car, thus ending 8 seasons of service, or 12 depending on when that route actually started. The Queen Exhibition car would see its route changed, as it would now operate from Bingham Loop to Dufferin Loop via Kingston Road and Queen Street. The Dundas Exhibition streetcar, on the other hand, would become an all-day service, with the route operating from a Y at Keele Street, south on Dundas Street and Roncesvalles Avenue, east on King Street and south on Dufferin Street to Dufferin Loop. A year later, the Dundas Exhibition streetcar would be extended west from Keele Street to Runnymede Loop. The Yonge Exhibition streetcar would see its route extended north from Woodlawn Avenue to Glen Echo Loop, although it remained a late evening return service. Lastly, 2 new services were introduced for the 1923 exhibition, with both routes beginning operations on August 25th. The first is the Beach Tripper Exhibition streetcar, which operated from Neville Park Loop west on Queen and King Streets and then south on Bathurst Street to Exhibition Loop. The other route introduced was the College East Tripper Exhibition streetcar, which operated from a Y at Danforth Avenue, south on Main Street, west on Gerrard Street, south on Broadview Avenue, west on Queen and King Streets, and then south on Bathurst Street to Exhibition Loop. These 2 routes would only operate for the 1923 exhibition and would never be seen again. Starting in 1929, the Queen Exhibition streetcar would see its route extended further east from Bingham Loop to Birchmount Loop. Short-term service at Bingham Loop and Woodbine Loop likely remained though. 1929 would also see the start of the Dufferin Exhibition streetcar, which was more of a shuttle operating between a crossover at King Street and Dufferin Loop. This route is an oddity as it never actually operated during the exhibition, but instead for other events held at the exhibition grounds like the Orange Man's Parade. This route also shouldn't be confused with the Dufferin streetcar, which only operated in the summer and never during the exhibition either. 1931 would see another big change for service to the exhibition, as it was that year that a new bridge crossing the railway tracks south of Front Street on Bathurst Street was completed. The old private right-of-way was torn up, and now all cars heading to Exhibition Loop would use the new tracks on Bathurst and Fleet Streets. July 31st, 1933 would also see the opening of the second incarnation of Exhibition Loop. In 1937, the Queen Exhibition streetcar would see its route changed, with it now operating from Dufferin Loop and east on Queen Street to Neville Park Loop. Since it was a late evening return service, cars would either return to Dufferin Loop for a second trip or return to Russell Car House. The service formerly provided by the Queen Exhibition streetcar to Birchmount Loop would be handled by the new Kingston Road Exhibition streetcar, which operated from Dufferin Loop to Birchmount Loop via Queen Street and Kingston Road. Due to World War II, the exhibition grounds would once again be used by the military as a staging ground for troops, although now the military would take control of the exhibition grounds in 1942, and for the first time ever, the Canadian National Exhibition would not occur. In the meantime, though, many streetcar services to the exhibition would be temporarily suspended for the duration of the war and a short time after. In 1941, the Dufferin Exhibition streetcar would be abolished on July 5th, ending 12 seasons of service. The Fort and Bathurst streetcars would begin serving Exhibition Loop. Lastly, on February 19, 1942, the Lansdowne streetcar would be extended to Exhibition Loop via east on Dundas Street, south on Bathurst Street, and west on Fleet Street to Exhibition Loop. All of this meant that during World War II, only the Bathurst, Fort, and Lansdowne streetcars served the exhibition grounds, and Dufferin Loop had no streetcar service save for the odd short-turned King streetcar. After World War II ended in 1945, the exhibition grounds would remain closed off until 1947 as the area was demilitarized. The Canadian National Exhibition would resume in August of 1947, and with it all of the suspended services to it as well. The Bathurst, Fort, and Lansdowne streetcars would resume their pre-war routes. The Fort streetcar would get an exhibition service, however, as the Fort Exhibition car. This route would operate from Exhibition Loop east on Fleet Street, north on Bathurst Street, and east on Front Street to an on-street loop via Scott Street, Wellington Street, and Yonge Street. The King Exhibition car would see its route changed, with it now operating along Parliament Street between Bloor and King Streets instead of Broadview Avenue. 1947 would also be the last year of service for the Dovercourt Exhibition streetcar, as it would be abolished on September 6th, ending 41 seasons of service. On August 27, 1948, some Dundas Exhibition streetcars would operate an early morning shuttle service for workers at the exhibition. This route would operate a loop line from Dufferin Loop, east on King Street, north on Shaw Street, and west on Queen Street back to Dufferin. February 2, 1948 would also see some Kingston Road streetcars diverted to Dufferin Loop. This would be the first out-of-season service to the exhibition, although it was only during rush hour. The 1949 exhibition would be the last season for the Queen Exhibition streetcar, ending 56 seasons of service. 1949 would also be the last year for the Yonge Exhibition streetcar, which was now operating on a diversion via Front Street, York Street, and Wellington Street due to the construction of the Yonge subway. Like with the Queen Exhibition streetcar, September 6th would be the last day of operations for the Yonge Exhibition streetcar, ending 33 seasons of service. Service to the exhibition would remain stable from this point until the 1960s, when once again service to the exhibition would see major changes. The 1965 exhibition would be the last season for the Kingston Road Exhibition streetcar, ending 28 seasons of service. 1966 would see some big changes to exhibition streetcar service, as the opening of the Bloor-Danforth subway itself created what was really the last great change to Toronto's streetcar network. Firstly, the King Exhibition streetcar would be rerouted, now operating from Exhibition Loop and east on King and Queen Streets to Woodbine Loop at Kingston Road. This was likely done to maintain at least some East End access now that the Kingston Road Exhibition streetcar was gone. The Dundas Exhibition streetcar would begin serving Dundas West Station, but still continue on to Runnymede Loop at least until 1967, with reports of cars continuing to operate to Runnymede Loop until all streetcar service was cut back to Dundas West Station. The Dundas Exhibition streetcar would also begin operating out of season to ferry fans to Exhibition Stadium for Toronto Argonaut and eventually Blue Jays games. Lastly, the Fort Exhibition Streetcar would cease operations with the Fort Streetcar in 1966, ending 19 seasons of service. Instead, all Bathurst streetcars would begin operating to Exhibition Loop all year round. In 1969, the King Exhibition Streetcar would see its route cut back from Woodbine Loop to an on-street loop via north on Church Street, west on Richmond Street, south on Victoria Street, and east on Adelaide Street back to Church. By the end of the 1960s, only 3 services to the exhibition remained, those being the year-round Bathurst Streetcar and the seasonal-ish Dundas Exhibition and King Exhibition streetcars. With the introduction of the CLRV streetcars, the remaining exhibition services would actually get their own numbers, these being the 521 King Exhibition and the 522 Dundas Exhibition. And of course, the Bathurst streetcar would be given the number 511. The 522 Dundas Exhibition streetcar would be the first to fall after running its route one last time for a Toronto Argonauts game on November 16, 1986. Due to declining ridership and the 29 Dufferin bus offering a more direct service to Dufferin Loop, the 522 Dundas Exhibition streetcar became untenable. After this, the route would be abolished. Or would it? Turns out not quite, as a bus shortage in 1995 forced the TTC to revive the 522 Dundas Exhibition one last time for the 1995 exhibition season. The end of the 1995 exhibition would also mark the final end of the 522 Dundas Exhibition, ending 71 seasons of service. 1995 would also mark the opening of Exhibition Loop's third and current incarnation. The loop was built to the north of the old one under the Gardiner Expressway. This new loop was built to LRT standards, as at the time the original Waterfront West LRT plan was still on the table. The 521 King Exhibition Streetcar too saw declining ridership, this time caused by the declining attendance to the exhibition through the 90s. As well, the under construction extension of the 509 Harbourfront to the exhibition was going to make the 521 King Exhibition redundant. 1999 was supposed to be the final year of service for the 521. However, due to construction work along Queen's Quay putting the 509 Harbourfront out of commission in 2013, the 521 King Exhibition would be restored to operate one last time. The 521 King Exhibition would operate its old route from Church Street to Exhibition Loop. The King Exhibition Streetcar was the first special exhibition service, and with its abolition in 2013, it was also the last, ending 122 seasons of service. Streetcar service to the exhibition grounds would continue on with the 511 Bathurst operating from Bathurst Station to Exhibition Loop, and the 509 Harbourfront operating from Union Station to Exhibition Loop. Unlike their predecessors, these two routes provided access to the exhibition grounds all year round for the various events that take place at the site throughout the year. In 2016, Dufferin Loop would receive regular streetcar service with the creation of the 514 Cherry Streetcar, which operated from Dufferin Loop to Distillery Loop via King Street. In 2018, this route would be replaced by a split 504 King Streetcar with the 504B operating to Dufferin Loop from Broadview Station. And this is how streetcar service to the exhibition looks today, with service provided by the 504B King, 509 Harbourfront, and 511 Bathurst streetcars. Of course, there are also various bus routes and the GO train which also serve the exhibition, but they are outside the scope of this video. The future of streetcar service to the exhibition is interesting, as first off, the Ontario line will have its western terminus at the exhibition, thus bringing the subway to the exhibition. As for streetcars though, the exhibition will be the launching point for the planned Waterfront West LRT, which among other things will bridge the gap between Dufferin and Exhibition Loops. How service will be operated through here and what routes will go where though is anyone's guess. As well, the Waterfront West LRT will require the rebuild of Union Station Loop. During this, it is likely that service on the 509 Harbourfront will be suspended. However, the 510 Spadina will likely be diverted to Exhibition Loop for the duration of construction. Lastly, with the redevelopment of the park lawn area further west, the TTC has proposed extending the 504B King out of Dufferin Loop and to the planned Park Lawn Loop. Streetcar service to Dufferin Loop instead may be handled by an extension of the 503 Kingston Road, which currently terminates at Charlotte Loop on Spadina Avenue. The Canadian National Exhibition has been an integral part of Toronto's history since the first Toronto Industrial Exhibition in 1879, and there has always been a need to move all of the people who attended. The first exhibition in 1879 was attended by over 100,000 people, and that number has continued to grow. Today, the exhibition sees over 1 million guests per year, and Toronto streetcars play a big role in getting them to it. The exhibition played a role during wartime as well, serving as a staging ground for the Canadian military during both World Wars. With the various additions to the exhibition grounds, such as the Enercare Convention Centre, BMO Field, and Ontario Place, Exhibition Place will continue to be an important hub of activity, and Toronto's streetcars will be there to get people to and from the site, just as they have done now for 144 years. And with that, I will end this video here. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it and want to see more like it, please hit that subscribe button because there are more videos like it on the channel and there are more videos like it on the way. If there's anything you want to say about Streetcar's service to the exhibition, don't be afraid to do so in the comments section down below. And with that, I'll end this video here.